Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post with Joel Sherman, a New York Post sports show, digital show where we get to talk about Yankees baseball all season long. We're really excited to have Joel Sherman do this with us because this gives us a look both on the field and behind the scenes where Joel gets to break down the entire season, all Yankees baseball talk. And I just cannot be more excited to do this with Joel. Joel, thank you so much. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, it's good. I guess this is the natural evolution, right? It's beat writer, columnist, podcaster, blogger. Eventually, I was going to end up with my face on this regularly. So I guess this is where we are in 2024.
It is an evolutionary business, right? We're learning how to talk about Yankees, and you've been covering this team and baseball for more than 30 years. And I know that this is something new for you, but also you're doing a killing with the show with John Heyman. And this is just another opportunity. And I feel like here in the local station, the Yankees are such an entity. They're so big and they're the most talked about sports franchise. I know football's big and all that, but the Yankees are the biggest team. You see the Yankees hat everywhere. I know I don't have to say that, but they're just always talked about in the offseason and during the season. So this is really a privilege for us to be able to talk Yankees baseball with you. So I want to get started with what we call the first pitch. This is the segment where we start off with the hot topic that we got to get right into, and it's Gerrit Cole, right? So this injury obviously was the biggest news piece last week in MLB. When you hear elbow injury and scans, MRI, you get a little worried. You get really worried and concerned that Gerrit Cole could be done for the season. So as the news started to come out and all the testing, Dr. Neil Eltrash, we find out he's only going to miss minimal 1 to 2 months, maybe more. So Joel, I really want you to just break down this situation and how big of an impact. I know it can't be understated, but this Gerrit Cole injury, how much is it going to impact this Yankees team this year?
Yeah, I guess first of all, I should say there's nothing like doing a Yankee show from Port St. Lucie, which is where I'm at covering the Mets right now. I'm actually leaving here tomorrow to go across the state to Tampa to finish out spring training with the Yankees. But I've been here, so I want people to know that's not actually my artwork in my apartment, and this isn't the lighting in my apartment or anything. I'm in a hotel room in Port St. Lucie. Gerrit Cole, let's start with some basics. I talked to someone who I know he had talked to leading into this, and he was very worried flying out to see Neil Elitrash. Because Elitrash wanted to see him after seeing the film. Neil Elitrash has, I think he's the Dodgers team physician. He's a guy a lot of people go to for surgeries, but he's also tied very strongly to Scott Boras and his clients. So the word was I had heard when he flew out was Elitrash would break any ties. So like if the Yankees said conservative, but Elitrash said go get surgery, he was going to go get surgery. If he told him sit out 4 months, he was going to tell him to sit out 4 months. And heading out there, he was very, very concerned because Elitrash wanted to see him in person. The fact is, you just can't describe this as good news, right? Because it's arguably one of the unicorns in the sport. A guy who's not only an ace, but makes all his starts, does it at a high level, takes the responsibility, and somebody you could hand the ball to in October and not be concerned about it. I mean, Tim, maybe Zach Wheeler, Logan Webb, like there's just not a lot of these guys in the sport. So losing him for any period of time has some significance. But for what he went out fearing, I heard he left with a flop sweat off his brow kind of situation where it is a nerve, that letting it calm down, and medicine does help this. And they do hope that in a month of not throwing, where he just does plyometrics to keep his arm in shape, that he will begin to do a buildup again. And then the question will be, what kind of buildup? Are we at the beginning of spring training again? I would suspect that's going to be the case for how long he's down. I think if you said to the Yankees and him, June 1st, you will be Gerrit Cole, the Yankees would go, give me the pen, we'll sign, and we'll go there, and we will try to figure out how to withstand it best without you for 2 months.
Right. And I think the Yankees will sign up for that in a heartbeat. Gerrit Cole will sign up for that in a heartbeat. It's not Tommy John, right? And that's what you fear. I think, Joel, and maybe I'm crazy here thinking this as a Yankees fan, is we get concerned because the way Yankees have handled injuries now for over a couple of years. Specifically, it comes back to Aaron Judge's toe injury, Anthony Rizzo concussion, these injuries, you hear, oh, he'll be back in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll put a timeline. Maybe we won't put a timeline. And then you find out later, oh, it was actually more serious and we didn't divulge all that information to you. So do you feel that the process and way it's gone about with ELETROSH meeting, getting multiple scans, multiple doctors' reports, and this timeline that they're giving us, do you feel like we're getting the full information from the Yankees here, or are you calling a little bit of BS on this? And could we possibly see, he has a setback? Obviously, setbacks can happen, but like maybe this is worse than what they're saying. That's just something that comes in the back of our mind. I think a lot of Yankees fans were reacting to the news as it was coming out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I would say this, Ryan. Two things could be true at the same time. I believe this because it came out of ELETROSH, not the Yankees. And the fact that I needed that corroboration says a lot about what I think about when the Yankees talk about injuries. I said this on the podcast with John Heyman last week. I'll say it to you here. One of my favorite questions to ask people when I know they're completely full of shit is, tomorrow I'm going to be writing about this. I once did it with Fred Wilpon with some stupid Met nonsense where I said, I'm writing about this and I'm going to leave it up to you to decide how I frame it. Would you like me to write in the paper tomorrow, you're an idiot or a liar? Right? And I feel when it comes to injuries often, my question to the Yankees is, are you incompetent or are you liars or are you both? I mean, I would even say this spring training, they started with Oswald Peraza was going to miss a day or two. Even when he was going for the MRI, the word was, we don't think it's serious. And then the next word is 6 to 8 weeks. I'm old enough to remember when Nick Johnson had a 2-day injury and missed 2 seasons, right? I just think over these last few years, their initial situation when they are talking about injuries is problematic. But I think within that, I think there's one other element. Mm-hmm. I do think Aaron Judge is separate almost from everyone else. I believe that a couple of years ago, if you remember, against the Royals, I think it was, he got hit by a pitch on his thumb, fractured his thumb. And I think the Yankees said 3 to 7 weeks. And it took 7 weeks. And I think Judge, I think the Judge was probably overly sensitive about this. I don't remember anyone that I would say in the mainstream reporting world saying, oh, why wasn't he back after 3 weeks? It was 3 to 7 weeks. This isn't Jacoby Ellsbury. We think that Aaron Judge actually wants to get back as quick as possible and play baseball. Like, we don't think he's a malingerer. But I think Judge felt like people thought he was not working hard to get back because he wasn't back on the short end of it. And so Judge kind of created this situation for the Yankees where it was like, I don't want my shit out on the street. Let me disseminate it. And I think it's put Aaron Boone in an impossible situation. And I think we saw that in the last 2 weeks where we're talking about general body soreness and other stuff. And then it slowly comes out. He needs an MRI. Oh, he's going to hit. No, he's not going to hit. Oh, he's going to play. Oh, he's not going to play. I think that the Judge situation, because it's Judge, because he's overly sensitive about timelines on his injuries and his information out on the street, I think it creates another layer of problems for a team that already is demonstrating it has problems when it comes to handling injuries, discussing injuries, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it that way with Judge and how sensitive he is, and that's why I think we as Yankees fans, when we see this news come out, and it's like, are they telling the truth or not? And you put it's interesting. So let's go back to Gerrit Cole here a little bit though. So and I'm glad we talked about the injury part, but now we got to talk about how this affects this rotation, the starting rotation now that was already had some depth concerns, considering they traded away a lot of that depth to get that big piece in Juan Soto this offseason. Do you see this starting rotation being able to hold up for the first couple months without their ace in the hole and Gerrit Cole taking that ball every 5 days? How is this going to affect the pressure on Carlos Rodon, Nestor Cortez, Marcus Stroman, those guys, even Clark Schmidt, and who's going to fill in that 5th role? Like, how do you see that playing out as we get through the first couple of months of the season? Because we are, Joel, believe it or not, a little bit over a week away from opening day.
Yeah, I have a couple of different thoughts on that also. The first one will probably get me in trouble with you and all the other Yankee fans, which grow the fuck up, okay? Like, Max Fried was on the injured list for 3 different stints last year. I think he made 11 starts. Every member of the Dodgers rotation missed significant time with injury. I just talked about teams that won 104 and 100 games last year. The Rays lost their top 3 starters for significant portions of the seasons. They won 99 last year. Jacob deGrom made 6 starts for the Rangers. They won the World Series. Like, at some point, I know the answer is always Blake Snell and trade for Dylan Cease and find answers outside. Either you're a good baseball team or you're a bad baseball team. The Yankees whining about freak injuries to Rizzo and Judge last year, and if they didn't happen, well, they happened to everyone. And if you can't overcome them, it says something about you, because the Rays lost their all-star shortstop, Wander Franco, with a quarter of the season left. Think about their payroll. Think about what their maneuverability is. You know who had the best record in the American League from the time Wander Franco left the team with his domestic abuse, his underage abuse issues? The Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah.
Much better than the Yankees, better than everyone in the American League. So my first answer is kind of like no crying in baseball. You got to figure this out, and partially no crying in baseball. You know who's been all-stars over the last 2 seasons? Rodon, Cortez, Stroman. This is why you got them. Do I like these pitchers? I don't, but you acquired them. These are your guys. These are the guys that you believed in. And I'll just detail this with stats. I know Tommy's going to hit me with better stats than this later, but let me do this. In 2022, Cortez, Rodon, and Stroman combined for 84 starts, a 2.92 ERA, a 2.06 batting average against, and 11.9 Fangraphs WAR. Those were those 3. Last season, they combined for 51 starts, a 4.90 ERA, 2.40 batting average against, 3.4 WAR, and 275 days on the injured list. Okay? So tell me which version the Yankees get. If they get the 2022 version, I think they'll probably win the AL East with 4 months of Cole. If they don't, if they get last year's version with Cole out, they will struggle maybe to even get to the 82 wins. That was a terrible season in Brian Cashman's words. These are pitchers they have invested a lot in, especially Rodon, and Stroman. And at some point, your money has to play on the field. This is the judgment of the organization. Did you pick the right players? Other teams are overcoming this. We tend to be myopic, whoever you are a fan of.
Right.
Oh my God, Judge is hurt. Have you noticed Bryce Harper's back is hurt? He's not playing, right? Like, I expect the Phillies will show up on opening day and try to win baseball games. Boston lost Lucas Giolito for the season. I mean, we didn't think much of them to start with. There's crap going on all over the landscape. The Yankees have a $300 million payroll. Figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out is right. I mean, I can also think back to, don't get me wrong, the Atlanta Braves lost their star, Ronald Acuna Jr., for the year. And what they do, they went on to win the World Series. So,
and if I could stop you there, right? It's almost a classic example. It was within like 3 days of each other. Acuna and Jacob deGrom were hurt that year. From that point forward, Atlanta took off, and the Mets fell apart, and Atlanta caught them at the end and won the division and won the World Series. And the Mets fell the wild card and lost to San Diego in the first round. Like, again, if you're a good team, there is a critical mass of, if you have enough good players injured, you probably can't overcome it. But you are in the same division as the Tampa Bay Rays. For goodness sakes, they do spring training a couple of miles away from where the Rays play the regular season. They know this well. Are you a good organization or are you not a good organization? You're the organization that, against all information on the street about who Carlos Rodon was, signed Carlos Rodon. You're the organization, despite all the word on the street about Stroman, including that he fought with your own general manager, signed Stroman. So this is a judgment on you guys, right, who were going to fix this in the offseason. You couldn't believe that there was never going to ever be a dent in Gerrit Cole. Pitching is like cigarette smoking. If you do it properly for a long time, you will have a bad outcome, right? And so at some point, Gerrit Cole, who was the most unbreakable pitcher in the sport was going to break. You can't just wish cast that is never going to happen. The most influential person in teaching me about the game was Buck Showalter, who, when I was a young beat writer, my first year he was a Double-A manager, but my second 2 years was the third base coach, and then my last 4 years on the beat were his 4 years as manager. Very influential to me. And one of the things Buck talked about incessantly, did it also as the Mets manager. I'm sure he did it in every place he went. I know with the Orioles, because we talked about it a lot, is he always played the what if game. Mm-hmm. When you're running an organization, when you're the manager, you always got to play what if. Like, I think about it a lot with the Mets right now. If Brett Beatty isn't good, what if Brett Beatty is, who's playing third base for the Mets? Like, I've seen a lineup card every day for the last 35 years. Somebody got to play third base. Can't just not have a third baseman. Mark Vientos? I don't think so. Joey Wendell every day? I don't think so. So, like, I worry about that what if for the Mets. One of the what ifs you had to play was, what if Gerrit Cole gets hurt? What are we doing? You can't just be 30 starts, no worries, and we're good. What's happening here? And so you sign Rodon, you sign Stroman. Schmidt is a first-round pick who has shown some graduation ability last year. Does he take another step? Cortez was an all-star 2 years ago. A really good story about their pitching lab and being able to help turn a guy who had some interesting stuff into something else. Man, show me. Like, survive 2 months without Cole.
Yeah, survive 2 months is the key there. So, and this is where my next part I want to ask you and get into here is, and you alluded to a little bit, should the Yankees have traded for Dylan Cease? Because this is part of that conversation of you are all in this season, because you did admit last year was a disaster of a season. Like you talked about, the mounting injuries was part of that excuse, but also the hitting wasn't there. So it seemed like there was an overcompensation this offseason. Let's get the hitting right. The rotation takes a little bit of a hit, right? Because you deal your depth for Juan Soto. You get an Alex Verdugo. So you have more contact hitters and lefty batters. It's a miracle that you can actually balance the lineup a little bit with some left-handed hitters now. But now your pitching is taking that hit. So the question is, a lot of Yankees fans were, do you go for the Blake Snell or really the Dylan Cease trade? We hear that the Brian Cashman, again, did not want to deal away his top prospect in Spencer Jones. You are getting only guaranteed of 1 year Juan Soto right now. So how do you feel about the Yankees deciding we're not going to meet that asking price and we're not going to deal away our top prospect in Spencer Jones because he's too good of a prospect and we see him making an impact on this club, maybe not next year, maybe a couple years down the road?
Yeah, so again, I'm sorry, maybe I'm rambling too long, but I have lots of thoughts on it. Number one, the thing again is, it's a very George Steinbrenner continuation for that he taught a whole fan base that the best answer is always out there and not here, right? And so the Yankee fan base generally thinks the 29 other teams are their farm system and that the Yankees should just be able to pluck whoever they want, whenever they want. They should be able to have a 60-man roster, right. Okay. So there's that. The second thing is, let's deal with Snell. At this point, I will point out to Yankee fans that it's not just the Yankees who haven't signed Blake Snell. An entire industry has made a statement about Blake Snell this is the morning of March 18th. To your point, 10 days from now, the regular season starts. The two-time Cy Young winner, the defending NL Cy Young winner, the entire industry has made a statement about him. If you want to use the C word, collusion, maybe. But if not, everyone has said that they have some issue with this player. He may end up on the Astros. I will remind Yankee fans, the Astros pitching problems right now are far worse out of the rotation than the Yankees. McCullers will be gone for a couple of months. Garcia for a couple of months. Verlander at least at the beginning. I think Urquidy is going, as we're doing this, they haven't announced the MRI. I've heard it's not great through the grapevine. So we're talking about multiple starting pitchers who are not going to be available to them at the start of the year. That's why they're being associated with Snell. And still at this second, when you and I are talking, they haven't signed him.
Yeah.
Right? So it isn't the Yankees that have some questions about that high walk total and how it ages. It isn't just the Yankees who worry about, is Blake Snell the kind of guy I want to bring to my city kind of thing. Look at the bigger issue. These are the people who've won the Cy Young the last 3 years. There's 6 Cy Young winners. Cole is hurt. Alcantara had Tommy John surgery. He's out for the season. Verlander is hurt. Robbie Ray had Tommy John surgery last year, is going to miss at least half of this season. Snell isn't pitching. This is, you want to start talking about guys who got votes like Brandon Woodruff out for probably the whole season. Scherzer, DeGrom, they're missing time. The idea of just throw more money at pitchers, we're seeing that might not be the greatest idea in the world, because here's the thing is, how many of the same people are in the pot, that the Venn diagram of, signed Rodon. Now he's gone bad. And because if he had been great last year, I don't think everyone would be yelling for Snell and Cease. But now that same group is going, yeah. And go get Snell. If you were really the owner of the Yankees, would you okay $60+ million for this season on Snell? Because remember, if he's $30 million, the Yankees are paying 110% tax because they're over 297 million. So that's $63 million. Your second and fifth pick and $1 million in the international pool. If you sign just this player, and if you sign him, you probably have to give him an opt-out after this year. So he either pitches, if he pitches like crap, you're stuck with him on the contract. If he pitches great, you've lost all that stuff, and he's gone for $63 million. I mean, if you were really the owner, not just somebody taking pot shots and saying he's cheap, would you okay that?
I wouldn't.
Right.
I wouldn't.
So now, as far as Cease, the Yankees have traded, I think you mentioned the boatload before for Soto. Go back over the last 3 or 4 years and look at how much, especially pitching, the Yankees have traded from, say, Jameson Taillon to today. It is an extraordinary amount of their farm system, and they haven't been hurt. So the question is about self-analysis. It's another area I don't think the Yankees have stood out, right? Like, holding on to the Anduhars and the Fraziers and the Gary Sanchez's, etc. But if they really think that Spencer Jones is Aaron Judge 2.0 from the left side, and by the way, athletic enough to play center field, you have to let an organization be an organization. And I would be less cautious with prospects all around than almost every team that's not the Padres and Phillies are. But, the Yankees have put a grade on these guys.
Yeah.
And the grade is, don't trade it for 2 years of Dylan Cease. And at some point, they certainly made an offer for Dylan Cease. They were very interested in him, especially at the winter meetings. But, I go back to, you got Cortez, you got Stroman, you got Rodon. If you had Cease and those 3 guys pitch like shit, what do you got?
Yeah.
They're at the mercy of those 3 guys, almost no matter what they do right now.
And what's interesting, Joel, is you put it at one point, if Stroman and Rodon and Cortez don't perform, it really is a moot point if you do get a Cease or even a Blake Snell. Also, not to mention the fact, and just real quick with Blake Snell, he's not ready to pitch opening day. I know he could say that he's pitching I mean, these guys really cannot be ready to take the ball right now if you were to sign them. Him or Montgomery, mind you, both free agents still. And then
just to double down on that point, because it's something, they're both Montgomery and Snell, Scott Boras clients. I've talked to Scott several times over the last couple of weeks, and he has a performance science place both in Florida, where I think Montgomery's working out, and Southern California, where I think Snell is working out. And he's talking about these guys being able to walk in and be ready because there have been, like simulated games, all this stuff. And I'm just like, Scott, this is a compliment to you. I want you to hear the compliment, which is, I think you're too good an agent to let them go full intensity, because the last thing you could have is one of them fail a physical at this point, right? Where they get nicked up training. So I'm sure there's intensity in their workouts, but there's to go to peak intensity and risk something at this late date when you've gotten to this late date. I just think he's too good an agent to allow it. So,
Right.
He can't afford to have these guys hurt. So yes, are they good enough maybe to roll out and be in a, like let's say in the Houston situation, they signed Snell. the Houston situation is dire enough out of the rotation for April that they could possibly say to Snell, if you could give us 3 or 4 innings, we're good on opening day. We're expecting you to have spring training in the major leagues. That's risky, but especially if they're signing him to a short-term contract where he can opt out. Again, another part of this, right? Like if you're allowing him to opt out after the season, you're going to want 30-something starts from it. So you're going to let him use April in the minor leagues and get down to 26, 25 starts. So like there's all kinds of implications here. And by the way, we're hardly hearing anything about Montgomery. Now it feels like Snell has to come off the board to get to Montgomery. And by the way, I think those two guys complicated Cease, because I think the White Sox left the winter meetings feeling, let all the free agent guys get signed, and then there'll be this desperation in the landscape for whoever doesn't get those guys. And it's now, the Yankees and the Padres and this team didn't get them. Let's start the bidding on Cease, because there is no inventory left until July and the trade deadline. So, but those guys never came off the board. The White Sox were committed to not put Cease in harm's way, potentially get injured and get nothing. So about 10 days, 2 weeks ago, they re-energized and told everyone, we're moving this guy. What's your last and best? Let's get this moving. And that's how we got to this point.
Well, and to your point, and again, the Yankees rotation, it's self-reflection about how good are these guys going to pitch this year, because I don't think they even know how well these guys are going to pitch until we get to opening day. Admittedly, we know the depth isn't there. We know that you're losing an ace in the hole in Gerrit Cole. But when you talk about the prospects and Dylan Cease and possibly trading for him, I go back to, and again, I don't want to be so negative, but it is the truth with the Yankees and how they've used their prospects. The names that come to mind: Miguel Andujar, Clint Frazier, Gary Sanchez, Greg Bird. These guys were all held on to too long as prospects and never turned into the quote unquote top players that we think that they're going to come through with the farm system and help that major league club. And I get a little bit, I guess, nervous when you say Spencer Jones and you hear Aaron Judge like comparisons. I feel like that's unfair, one, but two, at the same time, we talked about it. They're all in this year. Holding on to a Spencer Jones, how is that going to help your club when you know your rotation is probably not going to be as good as you would hope for without Gerrit Cole for the first couple of months? And not to mention the fact, who knows what type of version of Gerrit Cole you're going to get when he does come back. You don't know he's going to be the ace that you want to. There's always that concern. He can re-injure himself. So for you, when you look at this situation and the way the Yankees have, we'll call it prospect hug a little bit, their prospects to the point where they have no value anymore, how has that worked out for them in the business and how they're running this team and how we've gotten to this point now?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that perhaps the most influential person in how I think about the game is Buck Showalter. If I had to rank number 2, it would be Gene Michael, Stick Michael, who was always so incredibly kind in kind of letting me into his thoughts of, like, especially after he made a move, I'd debrief with him and take me through it. Why did you do what you did? And Stick all the time used to say, the most important organization to know is your own. And during the dynasty years, 20, 25 years ago, Yankees traded a ton of players, but they never traded Jeter. They never traded Bernie Williams. They never traded Pettit and Posada and Rivera. By the way, they never traded Ramiro Mendoza, who was a very valuable player to that team at that point. They traded a lot of Russ Davises, a lot of Lyle Moutons, a lot of Fernando Seganos, guys who had big reputations, a lot of Matt Drews, guys like that. So they knew in their organization the who could and the who can't. They did a great job of it. I think today the guy who's like that a lot is Dave Dombrowski. He takes a lot of crap from all the analytical executives who are like, he leaves the cupboards bare. And then I'll say, but you told me the cupboards were great. He left bare bad prospects. Like, they weren't there anymore. I know if he left them there, everyone would have gotten to, like, give each other high fives and say, look, we're number 6 in Baseball American, Baseball Prospectus. But who did he trade? I mean, Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech. Like, at the moment, people were, like, ready to kill themselves that he did that. I had somebody the other day when I asked them, who did he ever trade? He said, well, he traded Andrew Miller. And I said, okay, he got Miguel Cabrera in his prime. And Andrew Miller wasn't Andrew Miller when he traded him. And he wasn't Andrew Miller for the Marlins. It was 2 stops later in a different role from starter to reliever that he was Andrew Miller. Would you not have traded that for Miguel Cabrera in your prime? You are looking for a reason to shit on this guy. This guy looks at his prospect base, hasn't traded Stott, who looks like he's going to be a good young player, or Bohm yet. He seems to like the young center fielder who came up late last year, Rojas. Like, they seem to like Painter, who got hurt. He's protected guys in Philadelphia, but when he can, he goes and he aggressively does it. Same in Atlanta with Alex Anthopoulos. I think he's pretty aggressive, deciding these are the prospects who can and can't. At this point, in general, Brian Cashman hasn't ever been that hurt by the prospects he changed. I know there's always a lot of criticism. In 25 years of doing this, I think the worst he ever did was Mike Lowell, and that was literally like 25 years ago. This is an area that he's been good in not trading it. Maybe caution has helped that. So a couple of Andujars or Fraziers or Gary Sanchez or Bird didn't get traded. But this is actually an area it seems like he's made a ton of trades. I dare say he's probably certainly over 25 years made more than any current executive. And he hasn't been burned. Is it because he's too cautious? I think that like at some point we're being overly critical. Like some guys are not, it's hard to play Major League Baseball, and some prospects aren't going to be all that you hope they'd be.
Right. No, it makes sense. And I hope, and this is what we're going to see obviously play out in the next couple of months. If that rotation, we'll see if those guys can handle it, and they'll get that answer right away, whether or not those guys are up for the ball and being better pitchers like they were in that 2022 year, or in the 2023 year, you're going to get the injury, not so good years.
Ryan, I'll throw in one, like, we'll see. I've heard 2 stories. I don't know which story to believe. At the trade deadline a couple of years ago, Luis Castillo was available, and the Yankees very, very badly wanted him, right? And there's some people who said the trade couldn't have been done without Volpe, and some people who say it could have been, and maybe Peraza was a key guy in it. And think about how we feel about Peraza today. Maybe the Martian needed to be in it. Again, let's see what he turns out to be. But Luis Castillo solves so many of the Yankee problems today, right? Because he also was looking to do a long-term contract, which is now an incredibly team-friendly contract he has with Seattle. We've seen him pitch down the stretch. It looks like he can handle a big game. We've seen him pitch certainly for the other team in New York and come up big. I think if they had traded for him, you never signed Rodon. If you traded for him, you're sitting today, and Gerrit Cole's loss is a little less stingy than it feels. So I've never heard the full, what I would say, true story. And by the way, let's see what Anthony Volpe becomes. Because if what it would have cost you was Volpe, who I think is going to be a very good player and probably was not worth moving in that kind of trade. But he had 207 last year, struck out a ton.
Yep. Let's
see if the new swing produces a guy who could hit 250, maybe get on base 34% of the time, and continue to play defense the way he played defense last year.
And to unpack a little bit more, because you did open Pandora's box for me there a little bit, because you missed that on Luis Castillo, you did force the trade for Frankie Montas, which was more pitching depth that you gave away that could have been helping this year. So I think that's like the little bit of that cause and effect. Or we did one thing, it didn't work out that way, so now we have to go get another pitcher, and that didn't work out at all.
And by the way, if you want to spend Hal Steinbrenner's money more conservatively, should it have been spent a little more on Montas or Severino than Luke Weaver? It would have cost them again. So Montas was 16, Severino was 13. Double it is what it actually cost them this year. Do you want to spend 30-ish on Montas, or high 20s on Severino? I don't know, but right now they're looking at a rotation to open the season where maybe they have to use Luke Weaver, and you probably would feel a little different in these questions if they were sitting with healthy versions, and that's always a big deal. These guys haven't been healthy, though. Spend a little more on a Severino or a Montas. I don't know that we'd be talking about Snell. I don't know that we'd be talking about Cease.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point, Joel. I want to move on to our next topic here. Radio Irrational. New segment here where we talk about kind of a fan theory or fan talk about, is this more of a sports radio topic, or are we being rational as fans talking about this? Opening day starter. Marcus Stroman, one of the bigger acquisitions we got besides Juan Soto this offseason. That was after the Yamamoto deal fell through and he decided to go to the Dodgers. The Yankees pivoted and said, let's go get Marcus Stroman. So he apparently turned down the opening day starter role. I don't know how much you want to read into this, Joel, but is this going to be one of the first, of many Yankees moments that we're going to see with Marcus Stroman? And obviously we've seen him in the past in the New York market playing for the Mets. We've seen how he handles criticism. We've seen how he handles social media. Is this one of the first of many moments we're going to see with Marcus Stroman dealing with a little bit of fan backlash of how can you turn down opening day starter role?
Yeah, first, since you referred to the team as we, I think I have to differentiate here and point out I don't give a fuck if the Yankees win baseball games or not, or the Mets win baseball games or not. I didn't grow up a fan of either team, and I'm certainly not a fan of the Cincinnati Reds anymore, who I grew up a fan of mainly because of Pete Rose. So I do want to differentiate the we in this conversation, since it is called Pinstripe Post here.
But that's why this is the Radio Irrational, as we as fans come up with this little bit of crazy theory here.
Yeah. So I think this is radio. I mean, it's a nice little thing to start on opening day. I would want to take the ball on opening day, but I almost feel like we're looking for reasons to. Here's this is. If Marcus Stroman is a problem for the Yankees this year, it's going to be way more than something like this. Okay, this is probably a very particular player who doesn't want to mess up his routine, and just as soon, like, he's not running from game 2 of the season or game 3, whatever he's lined up to pitch right now. He's not trying to avoid the Astros, for example, right? He's going to pitch against them in that opening series, I think. So if that's the case, I just this feels like, hey, we need something for segment C. Let's all yell about Marcus Stroman. I think we have enough bullshit in life. We should move on.
Fair point. And I'm glad we kept it quick. I kind of agree with the Marcus Stroman. It is a little bit of a, I guess, overthought thing for Yankees fans. He is scheduled, mind you, to take the Yankees home opener. He is slated to be pitching for that. So it would be interesting to see how Yankees fans embrace him there. After that,
and by the way, if you probably ask Marcus Stroman, what's more important to you, a guy who grew up on Long Island, to start the season opener or the home opener for the New York Yankees, I think he'd probably say the home opener. So again, he's not running from the Astros. He's not running from a big day because he's going to get the home opener. So I just feel this is radio segment C, and let's see if we could yell at each other and go viral.
Good point, Joel. All right, let's move on to our next thing.
By the way, I fucking hate that. So go ahead.
All right, let's go to our next thing. Let's talk about Hogan Analytics. We're going to welcome in our PA, Tommy Hogan. He's going to give us his stat, and we're going to react to it. So let's bring in our guy, Tommy Hogan.
What's up, guys? Joel, hopefully I can deliver on the stat. You leaned into it earlier, so hopefully I can deliver here and give you a good one. I wanted to put in perspective the value that Gerrit Cole has been to the Yankees. And the Yankees, they have a .630 win percentage in starts by Gerrit Cole in his 4 years with the club. They're 68-40 in games pitched by Gerrit Cole. In games started by any other pitcher not named Gerrit Cole in those 4 years, they have a .543 win percentage. So if you extrapolate that over a 162-game season, when Gerrit Cole's on the mound, the Yankees play like a 102-win team. When he's not on the mound and anybody else is, they play like an 88-win team. So I wanted then to compare it to the other Cy Young winners since he has been a Yankee, so since 2020. There's only one with a larger win percentage margin of when he's on the mound compared to when he's not. And it's popular Yankees trade deadline acquisition this season, Shane Bieber. He's the only other one that is more valuable and the team plays better when he is on the mound than when he's a larger margin than Gerrit Cole.
Very interesting. I would say, though, that what I'd like to know is how many other aces are around this and what the gap is. So, like, while somebody might have a lower winning percentage than Cole, is the gap, like, let's say their winning percentage is 60%, is the gap 40% on other teams? So, like, I just think this is probably true across the board of aces. I think we probably need a little deeper dive into it to see it. I also believe this. I think you said it was a 543 winning percentage for the Yankees when Cole doesn't start. Where do they sign up for that, by the way, between now and June 1st? Let's hold them to that number, that 88 win level of 543 between now and June 1st. Would even the most rabid, you guys tell me, Yankee fans, accept that? Like, I know you'll bitch about every loss between now and then, but if they're sitting on June 1st and Cole is starting on June 1st and they have a 543 winning percentage, that I actually think that speaks well to the rest of the Yankees over the last 4 years. Not negatively, Tommy, is that they're still winning over 54% of their games when their ace isn't starting. Because I assume when the ace doesn't start for your team, this is across the board a significant drop for every club. And most every other club probably isn't playing 54% winning percentage in that time.
The interesting one that came up, actually, you're right. They all do still win. Blake Snell is the one where they actually win more games when he's not on the mound. So that could kind of speak to why he is still out there and why he has been a guy that, you used the C word earlier, there could be collusion around.
Well, I don't think there's collusion. I think there's collusion of thought, which is, again, just as you hit me with this theory, I would like to know the number of games lost for Blake Snell, who is generally a 5 or 6 inning pitcher, in those innings where, like, how many games did he leave tied? How many games did he leave ahead? But he left too many damn outs for a bullpen over and over. I mean, the beauty of Cole is he's going to get you 21 outs pretty much every time. And so you're down. If it's a close game, you get your 2 best relievers into the game. If it's a blowout, you get to use your back end, your deep guys. That's why a team wins a lot with its ace on the mound. And part of the reason, even with 2 Cy Youngs, people look askew at Snell is just how many 4-inning and 5-inning and 6-inning starts there is. This guy has played a long major league career. He doesn't have a complete game. I think he's pitched into the 8th inning 1 time in his career. Like this, I know the game has changed, but part of the true ace is, oh crap, we have a bullpen game tomorrow and we blew out our bullpen yesterday. Well, one of the reasons we blew out our bullpen yesterday is we knew we have our ace going today. And that guy's going to give us a ton of outs. That's one of the things you're paying for is volume. And the rare guy now, people were like, I think, blown away short term what Wheeler got from the Phillies. But I'm like, Wheeler is in that bucket with Cole. He makes every start. Amazing if you covered the Mets in the mid-2000s that I would talk about the durability of Zach Wheeler. He does it at an incredibly high level. And if you give him the ball in October, you are so comfortable with it. He's shown us, I think he's made 10 postseason starts now over the last 2 seasons. There's just not a lot of these guys. And Blake Snell isn't completely one of those guys because he doesn't give you volume.
And I think what's interesting about Snell too is that value, that $30 million you ultimately signed him to, is that really worth it when you, like you said, you got to go to your bullpen early and he's only giving you between 5 to 6 innings. At that for you is a value and investment. I don't know if you're getting a good return. And to Tommy's stat there to back it up, you're not winning as many games when the guy is starting. And for me as a Yankee fan, Joel, I would sign up a 54% winning percentage if Gerrit Cole's out for 2 months for the season. I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. And considering how tough this AL East is going to be with the Baltimore Orioles, who are not going away, mind you.
Yeah, I'll throw this out. The other scary thing about Snell, especially if you're signing him for any length of time, is this is a guy who walks 15% of the batters he faces. Right now, he gets away with it because pair of gym shorts and a T-shirt doing a tryout camp, wow, on Snell's stuff. But what happens? Like, I believe in how Gerrit Cole will age. He's so smart that if he had to learn how to throw a knuckleball, I think he'd learn how to throw a knuckleball. He's very adaptable. He's smart. Like, I don't want to give a 9 or 10 year contract to any pitcher, but I'm betting on the guy. Like, his adaptability, his intellect, the whole thing. Snell is getting away with it because he's outstuffing you even when he walks 2 guys in an inning. It's like the relief pitcher who's wild. Like usually that kind of guy becomes a relief pitcher and it's like, first and second, but then he blows away and he gets away with it. But as you age and you lose some of the stuff, you get away with it a little less than you did in the past. And I think there are legitimate. Blake Snell is an exceptional pitcher, but at what dollar value for short innings and big walks, where you have to accept that? And I think an industry has spoken that that is not where he's been marketed to this point. And even now, I can't go back to this. The Astros are desperate. Like go look who's going to be. J.P. France, Rono Blanco, Brandon Bialak. That's who's in their rotation right now. Like, the Yankee fans could do we're going to have to start Will Watt. Go look, opening week. Yep, you're going to get Framber Valdez and Christian Javier. Who's 3? Who you getting? When that series ends, who's pitching the next 2 days? Like, other teams do have problems, Yankee fans, including the one that keeps you up at night, the Astros, where you're about to kill yourself if Snell ends up there. Used to be you make the Yankees blink as an agent by saying, hey, I'm talking to the Red Sox. Now you make them blink by saying we're talking to the Astros.
It is interesting you put it that way. We do blink a little bit more when you say the Astros name there.
Yes. I'm not you, but I know you, Ryan. So,
Tommy, thank you so much for that, man. That was a good one.
Of course, no problem.
All right, Joel, let's finish this up. I want to do the final segment here. We're going to do Joel's Notebook. I want to open it up to you. And I know spring training's wrapping up here, and I'll be interested to hear if you have a good story here about possibly an injury or something that comes to mind when you think about this Gerrit Cole situation with the Yankees.
Yeah, it all means that I've been around too long. I just had a birthday this week. I'm not going to tell you what number. It's way too
happy belated.
Yes, but yeah. So why don't I do a combination spring training injury story that is very classic Yankee from another time, which means I have to transport you back to 1990. And Yankee fans, if you don't like anything you're seeing this year, the 1990 Yankees would end up having their worst record in about 8 decades. That was a Bucky Dent, Stump Merrill team, Mel Hall, Alvaro Espinoza team. It was my second of 7 years on the beat. I always tell people I'm very grateful that I covered a terrible team. I think it's valuable to see what terrible looks like and see the human nature around a terrible team where all the rats try to jump off the ship and no one ever takes blame for things that go wrong. But when I transport you back to that time, one thing to remember, the Yankees then were a joke. Whatever the Yankeeographies have done and all the bullshit on Yes to clean up George Steinbrenner. George Steinbrenner was the most hated man in baseball. He would ultimately be suspended for life late that season, for dealing with Howie Spira, a gambler. But teams used the Yankees to bid them up, and then they signed someplace else. Nobody wanted to play with the Yankees. Like, there was an offseason. Mark Langston, I want to play with him. Boom, went someplace else. Mark Davis was a relief pitcher. Ricky Henderson stayed in Oakland. So and the Yankees had to get the broken toys and the second and third level guys. And after the 89 season, they signed Pascual Perez to a 3-year, $5.7 million contract, which was about 5.7 more than anybody else wanted to give Pascual Perez, who was remarkably talented, but had a lot of off-field problems, including drugs, concerns about injuries, etc. So the Yankees sign him. That's the year there's a lockout that year. So spring training starts late. And when it starts, Pascual Perez doesn't show. Doesn't show on day 1, 2. It goes on a week. The Yankees send out the bat signal to his agency. One of those agents is still working. We joke about this all the time. He is a very young agent at that time for the agency he works for, which doesn't even exist anymore. He is dispatched to the Dominican to see if he can find Pascual Perez. And after a day or 2, he finds him drinking Presidentes and playing dominoes with his friends. And he finally convinces him to get on a plane. It's time to play baseball. We've made a contract and a promise with the Yankees. And the Yankees are so pissed at him, Ryan, that he lands at the airport late in an afternoon. Yankee workout for the day is well over. He's picked up. He's driven directly to Fort Lauderdale Stadium. The Yankees trained in Fort Lauderdale. Then they moved to Tampa in 96. This is 90. A couple of cars pull up, a bunch of people get out of these like two huge sedans. One of them is Pascual Perez. It's now about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. They turn the lights on in the stadium. They call Billy Connors, who is the pitching coach then, to calm down. They call all the reporters to witness it. And Pascual Perez, in full uniform, in an empty stadium, with coming straight from the Dominican, like forget about the ramp up or anything, throws a full bullpen, multiple innings, in front of reporters in an empty stadium. True, he lasted 3 starts, blew out his shoulder. Yankee people definitely believe the two are connected. Made a couple of starts the next year and then missed the following season because he was suspended for drugs. That was Pascual Perez. That's one of my all-time injury stories. It's just one of my all-time stories because what could happen in 1990 when George Steinbrenner was mad, I try to think what that might look like on social media today. Pascual Perez, all the pictures showing up, getting out of a car.
That's what I'm thinking about, Joel, is how this would play out in the social media, getting the tweets live as it's happening. Pascal has just gotten out of the SUV. He's lined up in full uniform. He's about to throw a full bullpen, empty stadium.
It's such I'll tell you, I actually really enjoyed covering Pascual. I thought he was a tortured soul. And I actually think there was a little bit of pitching genius to him, not that different from Orlando Hernandez, but Orlando Hernandez had his act together. And Pascual didn't. He was really, and I unfortunately I believe he died young. I think I don't want to talk out of school. I think in a like a tragic way. Yeah, I liked Pascual. Pascual was great to deal with. Happy, open. I remember that spring training. We're talking about a guy who showed up a week late, by the way. Think about that. Talking about the unprofessionalism of the other players, that they're not ready to win. And the analogy he used, I hope there's a story out there to prove it, was he talked about like when you have chickens fight each other, you got to make sure your chicken's ready to fight. So to explain why the Yankees weren't ready to play, he used cockfighting as an analogy. So I really missed covering baseball in the 1990s. It was a different thing. I hate social media. Yeah, that's my was that a good way to end our first show?
Yeah, it was.
On my best Pascual Perez story.
I didn't think we were going to go there, but I actually I'm more appreciative that we did go there. I mean, that is a scene to play out right there.
By the way, John Heyman was I was the beat guy for the Post. John Heyman was the beat guy for Newsday. John was there. Like they called all the beat guys down. We all watched it.
Were you all dumbfounded when that happened? Like, why are we here watching a bullpen session right now in an empty stadium?
So I was very young. It was my second year on the beat. And I had only covered the Yankees as a beat. I hadn't done a beat before that. I've been at United Press International up until I joined the Post. I joined the Post. After a couple of months, I became the Yankee beat writer. And so I only knew crazy. Like, it was all crazy under George in 89, 90, 91, 90, until kind of Showalter and Stick came along and kind of professionalized the group a little more about how you build a good clubhouse and good culture and the great farm system that Brian Sabian and Bill Livesey helped bring to the, if I had told you in 1990 how bad and unprofessional that team was, that the Yankees would ultimately be the team of that decade and win multiple championships at the end with this great professional group, it would have felt impossible. And yet, in 1990, they drafted Pettit and Posada. They signed Rivera out of Panama as actually an older player out of Latin America. And so, like, underneath, there was all these good things going on. But on the top level, there was a lot of Stump Merrill and Pascual Perez.
Fascinating story, Joel. And Joel, thank you so much for this. That is the show, unfiltered, raw. Joel Sherman giving it to us straight. I appreciate you, man. This was awesome. Just breaking down this whole Gerrit Cole situation, how it impacts the season and all that. But I know that you have a lot of valuable time here, and I'm looking forward to doing this with you all season long. This is going to be a New York Post Sports YouTube show. We're going to broadcast all throughout the season. And I hope to do, a lot more of these great conversations about just what's going on with Yankee land. And I really can't appreciate you enough for giving us some time and doing this for us, man.
No, thank you, Ryan. Thank Tommy also. I appreciate you both working on this. I hope it's a success. I hope Yankee fans come and all baseball fans come and enjoy it.
Yep. And if you are watching this on the YouTube channel, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. You're going to see a lot of content like this specifically for the Yankees all season long. And that's the show. Appreciate you, Joel.
Thanks, Ryan.